There is a system. It's not visible to most people, but it exists. The dishes on the left side of the sink are the ones from this week. The ones on the right side are from before that. There is a spatial logic to it that makes complete sense internally and would require significant explanation to anyone else. The floor has been vacuumed. Not recently, but it has been vacuumed. The memory of it is vivid. It was a whole thing. There is a pile on the chair in the bedroom that has become, over time, less of a pile and more of a permanent installation. It is part of the room now. It has a presence. You have, on at least 3 separate occasions, gotten close to fully cleaning the bathroom, and something happened. Not something dramatic, just something else that seemed more urgent at the time, and the bathroom waited. If any part of that felt uncomfortably specific, this video is not here to shame you. It is here to tell you what is actually happening in your brain, in your psychology, that makes the thing that looks simple from outside feel genuinely consistently difficult from inside. Because this is where most people don't expect the research to go. In 2010, researchers Saxbe and Repetti at UCLA published a study that measured cortisol levels, the body's primary stress hormone, in women across their home environments. Women who described their homes as cluttered, disorganized, or with unfinished projects showed measurably elevated cortisol throughout the day. Not just when they were looking at the clutter, throughout the day. The home environment was functioning as a chronic, low-level stressor, one that the body was registering even when the conscious mind had stopped actively noticing it. A 2011 study from Princeton University by researchers McMains and Kastner found something related in the visual system. When your visual field contains multiple competing stimuli, objects, piles, things out of place, your visual cortex has to work harder to process and filter them. Every object in view competes for neural resources. In a cluttered environment, those resources are being drawn on before you've started anything you actually intended to do. Which means the pile on the chair is not just a pile on a chair. It is a constant, low-grade drain on the cognitive resources you keep wondering why you don't seem to have. The clutter creates the very exhaustion that makes it harder to clear the clutter. It is, in a specific and documented sense, its own worst enemy. But here is what is more important than what clutter does to the brain, and more honest than the assumption that this is simply a matter of not caring enough. There are several distinct psychological mechanisms that make the initiation of cleaning disproportionately difficult for specific types of people. And most people who live in chronic mess are operating under at least one of them, often without knowing it has a name. The first is executive function. Executive function is the set of cognitive processes responsible for planning, initiating, and sequencing tasks, for turning the intention to do something into the actual doing it. Psychologist Barkley's foundational research found that executive function is the key variable in understanding why some people can start a task easily and others cannot, even when both people genuinely want to complete it. Cleaning a home is not a single task. It is 40 sequential micro-decisions. What to pick up first? Where does this go? Is this something to keep or discard? Before anything visible has changed. For someone whose executive function operates differently, whether through ADHD, depression, or simply a brain that initiates differently, that sequence is not a background process, it is a wall. The second mechanism is depression. Peter Levinson's behavioral model of depression, still foundational to how psychologists understand and treat it, identified reduced motivation to engage in activity as both a core symptom and a maintaining factor. The person who cannot get themselves to clean their home is not always someone who has made a choice. They are sometimes someone for whom the motivational bridge between intention and action has been quietly dismantled by something they may not have named yet as depression. The mess is not the problem. The mess is a symptom of the problem. And cleaning the mess without addressing what's underneath is like painting over a water stain without fixing the leak. The third mechanism is one that surprises people most: perfectionism. Research by Randy Frost and colleagues on the dimensions of perfectionism found a consistent pattern in people who struggle to initiate tasks: the belief that if it cannot be done completely, correctly, and all at once, it should not be started. This is the person who looks at the kitchen and thinks, "I don't have time to do all of it," and so does none of it. Who starts cleaning the living room, notices the bathroom needs it too, feels the weight of everything that remains undone, and stops, because the partial completion feels worse than the original state. This is not laziness. This is a thinking pattern in which the standard has been set so high that the gap between current reality and acceptable outcome is too large to begin crossing. And then there is the mechanism that ties all the others together and makes the whole pattern significantly harder to break: shame. Psychologists June Tangney and Rhonda Deering, in their foundational work on shame and guilt, made a distinction that is essential to understanding what happens to people who have lived in chronic mess for a long time. Guilt says, "I did something bad." Shame says, "I am something bad." Guilt motivates correction. Shame motivates avoidance. The person who feels guilty about a messy home is more likely to clean it. The person who feels shame about a messy home is more likely to not invite people over, not think about it directly, not open that door, not look at the pile, because looking at it means confronting the evidence of what they have decided, quietly and without examination, it says about them. And the avoidance makes the pile grow, and the pile growing deepens the shame, and the deeper shame makes the avoidance more necessary. This is not a character flaw in a loop. It is a shame response in a loop, and shame responses do not respond to judgment. They respond to something that looks more like the opposite of judgment. Here is what the research points toward, and I want to be honest that none of it is dramatic. The first thing, if the mess is connected to depression, if the absence of motivation to clean is part of a wider flatness, a wider difficulty engaging with things you used to be able to engage with, the cleaning is not the place to start. Jacobson and colleagues' research on behavioral activation, one of the most effective interventions for depression, does not start with the most overwhelming task. It starts with the smallest possible action, the one that costs least, the one that creates the minimal evidence that action is possible. Not cleaning the kitchen, washing one cup. Not because one cup matters, because the act of completing it is information the nervous system needs to hear again. The second thing, if perfectionism is the mechanism, if the all-or-nothing thinking is what makes starting feel impossible, the research on this is consistent. The goal is not to lower your standards, it is to make the unit smaller. Not clean the house. Clear this one surface, right now, before anything else. The standard can stay. The scope has to shrink, until it fits inside the window of energy that's actually available. And the third, the one that underlies all the others. The pile on the counter is not evidence of who you are. It is evidence of what has been difficult, which is a completely different thing. Tangney's research showed that the move from shame to guilt, from "I am bad" to "this situation needs changing," is the single most important shift in determining whether change actually happens. You are not a person who never cleans. You are a person for whom cleaning has been disproportionately difficult for reasons that are specific, nameable, and not a verdict on your character. Those are different sentences, and only one of them gives you anywhere to go. If you watched this entire video,
Whether you watched it from a very tidy room wondering about someone you love, or from a room that looks a lot like the one described in the first 60 seconds, you now have something you didn't have before. Not a cleaning plan, not a productivity system, a more accurate description of what is actually happening, and why the person standing in front of the pile is almost never what the pile makes them look like. That's worth something. Subscribe if you want more of that. More honest, more specific, more accurate explanations of the things about people that get misread every day. The pile can wait. This was more important.